The other day, somebody suggested to me that I would not have developed anorexia when I was an adolescent if I had been allowed to transition as a child. And this is an interesting thing to say to somebody like me who was gender dysphoric as a child, who did everything I could to present as a boy during elementary school. And then as my body started to change, I developed anorexia. So I can understand sort of where this comment is coming from, especially if you believe that somebody could be born in the wrong body, and that's where the gender dysphoria is coming from. The problem is that gender dysphoria and anorexia are very similar. And I think anorexia is just another way in which it's another symptom of an underlying issue. If you look at the research done on anorexia, it's clear that anorexics don't get better if they lose weight. In fact, oftentimes, the more weight they lose, the more weight they want to lose, and the fatter they feel and think that they are, and the less control they feel over their life. And this sounds so similar to gender dysphoria. There are some people who transition and they claim that the transition was the best thing that happened to them, that it saved their lives. But for a lot of people, transitioning simply reinforces their gender dysphoria. So it makes them hyper aware of things, that the way in which their body isn't the gender they want to be. So transitioning actually encourages dysphoric feelings, because there's no way that you can ever be something that you're not. And so the more that you focus on trying to be something that you're not, the more mental health issues you have, the more anxiety you have, the more dysphoria you have. And I'm hearing this from a lot of people who are detransitioning now, who are encouraged to transition when they were younger, and have detransitioned because they discovered that transitioning did not help their mental health issues. And I can tell you what it's like. I was pretty young when I had gender dysphoria. I mean, when I was presenting as male, I was young, and it's hard for me to sort of think back into how I felt, other than this continual attempt to present as more and more masculine, and the continual hatred of my body. So the more dysphoric I got, the more I hated my body. The more I tried to pass as a boy, the more dysphoric I got, because I wasn't a boy. So it's this sort of cycle of thinking. And when I started to develop anorexia, it was exactly the same thing. I thought, if I could just lose a couple pounds, I'll be okay. I won't hate myself. The world won't hate me. I won't be a bad person. All these weird messages that I had surrounding my weight. So I lost a little bit of weight. And instead of being like, oh, I lost a little bit of weight, I feel better about myself, I got into this cycle of thinking where I was like, nope, that wasn't enough. I need to lose more weight. I need to lose more weight. I need to lose more weight. And as it turns out, I could never lose enough weight to feel like I was okay, to feel okay in my body, to feel like I was skinny. And it's exactly the same thing as gender dysphoria. It's the exact same process of, I want to be something I'm not. If I just spend all my energy and time focusing on being that something that I'm not, I don't have to focus on all these other issues. And in fact, I don't even have to think about the trauma that caused the original gender dysphoria in the first place. So treating gender dysphoria as if somebody's born in the wrong body would be like treating somebody who's anorexic as if they really are fat. The fact is, no matter how much weight an anorexic loses, she is not going to feel thin. She's going to look in the mirror and think she's fat. And I know this because I've been what they consider dangerously thin. And when I was dangerously thin, I did not feel thin. I felt fat. And I thought if I could just lose some more weight, I would be okay. So the idea that we should affirm someone's gender dysphoria is much like affirming an anorexic's idea that she's fat. It's incredibly unproductive. And one of the issues that people with gender dysphoria and people who are anorexic have is this disconnect between their bodies. And what people who have a disconnect with their bodies need to do is not focus on what's wrong with their bodies. What they need to do is focus on what's right with their bodies, to focus on feeling integrated with their bodies. I think that this disassociation that happens happens with trauma, it happens when you're feeling very gender dysphoric, and it happens when you have an eating disorder. There's this this sense of being separate from your body, of being something other than your body. And often when I'm feeling dysphoric or having these eating disorder feelings, I often think I wish I could just take my brain out of my body, because I want to be alive. I just don't want to be connected to this thing that I'm connected to. And that is the crux of this mental health issue, is that feeling of disconnectedness, that feeling of us against them, almost like my brain against my body. My body's wrong, my brain is right. If I could just change my body to match what my mind think it's supposed to be, then I'll be in harmony. But the very essence of that way of thinking is dysfunctional, because it's suggesting that we are somehow separate from our body, when in fact we are our body. We are one and the same. We are integrated. We should be. And there's really no way the body you can be born in the wrong body. You are born in the body that you're born in. So encouraging people to think that they can be born in the wrong body, encouraging people to embrace those dysphoric feelings, will not resolve the underlying mental health issues. The underlying mental health issues will fester, and they will come out as anxiety, and they will come out as depression and potential suicidality. And one of the concerns that I have is that the trans movement is so kind of grabbing on to the idea that children should transition. So those children who transition will never be able to process what caused the original dysphoric feelings. And ultimately, it's going to be hard for them to question whether or not transitioning is a good idea, because they've already been kind of filtered down that path. And from what I understand, in the trans community, if somebody has transitioned and wants to detransition, they lose their support system. Oftentimes the trans community will really just reject them and ostracize them. So again, I want to put in the caveat that this is my experience, and I suspect that for a lot of children with gender dysphoria and a lot of girls and women with gender dysphoria, it's different. It's fundamentally a different thing than a male who is autogynephilic and wants to change his body to be the idealized woman of his dreams. So you've got the autogynephilic male here, and then you've got gender dysphoria over here. And the reason that the autogynephilic has gender dysphoria is because he's sexually aroused by the idea of himself being a woman. So that's very different, and I don't want to address that because I have no experience with that. I am a woman, and I have no idea what those feelings are like. But I do know that gender dysphoria is, for the most of us that are not autogynephilic, gender dysphoria is the result of an underlying issue. Just like anorexia is the result of an underlying issue. Anorexics are rarely fat to start out with. Generally, they're either of normal build or slender build to start out with. It's a dysfunctional thinking mechanism that happens for whatever reason. And I think it's a lot of it for me is when I'm very stressed out and when I'm feeling like overwhelmed, if I can focus on losing weight, then I can take my focus off of my problems. And that's the exact same thing as when I was a kid. When I put all my effort into being a boy, I didn't have to think about all the other issues in my life. I could just focus on being a boy. And I truly believed that if I could just somehow achieve that goal of becoming a boy, that all my problems would be better. And obviously that's not true. So I'm hoping that we can move away from this idea that transitioning is going to be the solution. And I also want to move away from the idea that somebody can be something that they're not. Because I keep hearing, and this is something that's been really bothering me, I keep hearing trans women talk about what it's like to be a woman. And based on how they're talking about it, it's very clear to me they don't know what it's like to be a woman, okay? They know what it's like to think that they are a woman, but they do not know what it's like to be a woman. Just like when I was a little kid and I was presenting as male, I was thinking I could be a boy, but it was me thinking I was being a boy, not me being a boy. It was me trying to emulate what it was like to be a boy. It was me looking at the boys and trying to act like they acted. But I don't know what it's like to be a boy, and I never will, because I'm a woman. Just as someone who is born male will never know what it's like to be a woman because they're born male. So I think that we need to kind of, when we talk about gender dysphoria, we need to sort of separate autogynephilia out, because it's a very different issue. And I don't know if I think it's a sexual orientation issue, or it's called a paraphilia. So it's a sexual fetish. And that's very different from what we're dealing with, which is gender dysphoria, and it's the result of some disconnect between the brain and the body. And it is caused by an underlying issue. Either it's internalized misogyny, internalized homophobia, externalized homophobia, sexual assault, confusion about gender roles, underlying messages from those around you that they would prefer you if you were a different gender. And these are all things that can be helped by changing the way of thinking. So this is kind of getting to be a long video with lots of squirrels in the background, but I wanted to talk a little bit about that kind of self-hatred that I have when I was gender dysphoric and when I have my sort of anorexic tendencies, and I have other self-harming tendencies, and those really come out when I have problems and when I am stressed. I get this deep sense of self-hatred, and that is amplified. If you have somebody telling you that you were born in the wrong body, that's going to amplify your self-hatred. That's not going to mitigate it. It's going to amplify it. No matter what you think, if you're telling somebody that they're born in the wrong body, that's giving them a message that they're inherently wrong. They're inherently wrong. The best way to address these feelings are, instead to focus on all the ways in which you're dysphoric. So I hear people like, oh my gosh, my dysphoria is so bad because I heard my voice. Or, oh my gosh, my dysphoria is so bad because I went to try on clothes and they didn't fit me because I was trying on women's clothes, and males' bodies and female bodies are different. So you can focus on all the ways in which you feel dysphoric, or an anorexic can focus on all the ways in which she feels fat. Or you can change your focus. And a lot of this is kind of a narcissistic way of thinking. If you're gender dysphoric or if you're anorexic, you are so focused on yourself that you're not looking out there in the world. And the fact is there's a lot going on in the world. And if you spend all the time focusing on yourself, you're going to miss all that.